Hi everyone, Michael here from Mirrors of Consciousness and creator of the Overfold Tarot, and I'm back with another Cartomancy video. I've been kind of debating about how I want to proceed with this series because I I've been trying to get away from the whole card by card, this card means this, that card means that kind of run through. Although I do find that really helpful and at some stages very necessary. I also kind of think that going more general and having certain principles understood um, first helps later on when you actually get to readings, because I find that with all card reading techniques, the place where a lot of people get really stuck is when they get to the actual reading of the cards. So they'll study card by card meanings really well and know them each individual card really well, but um, they may not be able to transfer those definitions into either contextual spread positions or being able to string those definitions, those meanings, into a cohesive story from card to card to card. And I did it too. I mean, that's how I started. Was I learned card by card meanings, and it wasn't kind of until I took a step back and a broader look at things that my reading started to flow a little bit. And it's actually one of the reasons why I don't do written text-based readings. I prefer either to send a video to clients or do face-to-face, either FaceTime or in-person readings. Because I find that it's a bit easier to string a story together when you're not writing down, oh, this position, this card. Some people are really skilled at that, and that's totally cool. It's just not my skill set. But the point of that is just that my approach to this series, and to some degree the Tarot de Marseille series, has been, let's go with broad strokes, let's go with concepts, let's go with general ideas. And that helps you not only look at the cards, or whichever deck you're using, um, in a theoretical way broadly, but taking that step back and taking that broad view, I find also helps your first stage when you get to spreads or readings, even if it's a non-positional spread, like a 3 card line or a 5 card line, or if you just throw cards on the table with no spread positions and no number in mind, that's also totally a totally valid way of reading. But when you get to that point where you're actually giving readings, taking that step back and that general approach um, tends to help weave the story, and then you kind of go into each of the little sections, each of the details with each individual card or card pairing. And cartomancy, playing cartomancy, I would say that's even more important, because so much of the individual card meanings is dependent on the surrounding cards, especially when we get to reversals. So today I wanted to talk about reversals and temperature, the temperature of the suits and temperature of the cards. I think I might have mentioned temperature a little bit when talking about red and black and yes or no, those explorations. And maybe I talked about it a little bit in the card combinations video as well, the pairings. Um, but this is an idea that Enrique Enriquez brings up in context with reading the Marseille Tarot, where wands and swords are cold in the sense that they're used for defense, or they're used to create distance between you and someone else. If you're holding a wand, that even just holding the wand itself is a bit of a barrier. Um, and sometimes you're using a wand or a stick to push someone away or keep your distance from someone. It's turned toward them. It's not just held vertically, but it's turned toward them, and it keeps distance. And the same with a sword. Even when swords are used more in a ritualistic or um, kind of ceremonial manner, they're a signification of rank or status, and they're kind of used also to create delineation or difference between um, the person with the sword and the person without the sword, or if it's two people with swords, they're dueling, and again, there's a distance involved. Um, and even to that point, um, often in martial arts and in kind of combat theory, um, the theory often go well. People often think that, oh well, if I have a bigger sword or if I have a longer spear, then I can take more distance from the person and still be effective, and that's true. But should someone be able to breach that distance and come in closer with a shorter weapon, like a short dagger or something, then they're able, that closeness actually is in a way more threatening. The distance that you've created with a longer or larger weapon um, is not necessarily an advantage once the distance is closed. Um, I don't know why I kind of went off on that, but the point is that swords and wands create distance, whereas cups and coins in the Marseille create closeness. They're warmer. When you're taking a cup, you're usually toasting someone, you're usually congratulating someone, or partying with them, or sharing a drink with someone is a great way to get to know them. Having a coffee with someone is a great way to open conversation and get to know them, and it creates more closeness. There's even that emptiness of the cup. It allows one to fill that with pouring your intent and your experience into that cup. It creates a vessel for sharing in a way. And then similar with money, when you're exchanging money, money of course can create distance. Money disputes can create great distance between people, but the exchange of money does tend to bring people together. And sometimes, in terms of work and jobs, it can bring people together who would normally not associate with each other. They're not in the same social circles or whatever. And but economically, you may need um, someone to do a certain kind of work for you because you don't have that skill, and you hire that person. That's where the money is. You hire that person to do this job, and that um, creates a bond, creates a closeness, and then maybe you wind up talking with that person. Like if you go for a massage, you may wind up conversing with that person, getting to know them in a closer way. That's not just, I mean, massage is kind of intimate anyway because they're touching you and stuff, but you get to communicate and express yourself with them also. In some cases, depends on, of course. Or like in the summer, I had someone come in and do some electrical work for me, um, because there's no way I'm going to touch live wires. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to electrocute myself. So I hired an electrician to come in. And I mean, we're not best of friends or anything, but just the fact that he was around, and I was here also at the same time. Um, you naturally talk to each other, and he's not a card reader, he's not a yogi, so he would be outside of my normal social circle, but the economic interaction created closeness. So that's that idea of temperature with regards to the Marseille, where cups and coins are warm, swords and wands are cool. And that can be relatively transferred directly over to Cartomancy. And I would even go a step further to say that the temperature is a continuum. So spades would be the coldest of the four suits. Then clubs would be cool but still warm. And then diamonds would be warm but still coolish, because again, there's that changeability. And the other thing about coins, or diamonds in this case, is diamonds can also create distance because um, of differences in economic status. So coins can bring people together, of people of different economic statuses together, but coins can also separate, or diamonds can separate, or demonstrate a delineation between economic circles, economic layers, even though really there's not really that much of a difference between people. People all have the same basic set of issues and interpersonal issues, whether you're rich or poor. We all kind of face some of the same issues, not all, but the same kind of personal, emotional issues. We all face them. And so then hearts are kind of the warmest of the four suits, because of that commonality, because everyone has the capacity to love, everybody falls in love, everybody gets their heart broken, everybody has either has friends or requires friendship, and requires that kind of emotional connection. And even when people are a little bit more solitary, there's still everybody has emotions. Everybody feels things. Whether you deny them or not, that's a different story. But everybody has emotions. So hearts are kind of the warmest suit, because of emotions, but also because that's also what connects us to other people. And of the four suits, so we'll come back to that temperature issue in a bit. Of the four suits, three of the symbols are vertically asymmetrical. That is, if you flip a heart, I talked a bit about this in the similarities between suits. If you flip a heart, the point is now at the top. If you flip a spade, the point is now at the bottom. And so visually, there's an obvious reversal. When the ace of hearts is reversed, you know it. When the ace of clubs is reversed, you know it. You can see it. Same with the spade. With the diamond is the only suit that the symbol itself, it's vertically symmetrical. So there's no obvious way of determining whether a diamond is reversed or not. Just generally speaking, there's one exception. And so for people who use reversals in Cartomancy, and for me, I'm not someone who usually uses reversals for tarot. Sometimes I do, but usually I don't. But for Cartomancy, I definitely do. I purposely incorporate reversals into my shuffling process, and so I ensure that there's always going to be some reversals. So for people who use reversals with playing cards or with other decks that don't have any obvious differences between upright and reverse, such as some Marseille decks, sometimes people will mark the top or bottom on their deck with a dot or some other kind of, they'll make some other kind of marking on the deck to make it clear which is the top and which is the bottom. I prefer not to do that. I prefer for the cards that have no obvious reversal, I prefer to read them as they are. They could be, it's like an unknown. They're like in that quantum state of reversed and non-reversed at the same time. And I like that, and that's one of the reasons why I like the traditional pip layouts. Some decks, later decks, do play around with the layouts of the pips, either making them more symmetrical so that even the less symmetrical layouts are more symmetrical, or making them more obviously asymmetrical. But I prefer the traditional ones usually, because I like that idea that some cards are always in that quantum state of reversed and non-reversed, and other cards are obviously reversed when they come up, and incorporate those into my meanings. This kind of will tie in a little bit to the Samhain video that I recently posted. You don't have to if you want a little recap of that, or if you want to go into the elemental theory behind that reading, you don't necessarily have to do the reading, but the first 20 minutes or so, the first third of that video goes into some elemental theory. And so instead of looking at the temperature as a continuum, we can actually kind of wrap the two ends from the warmest and the coolest ends of the continuum back around to each other, so that we get actually a circle. So when any card is reversed, we can think of that card as transitioning in temperature between the suits that are along that continuum next to it, or in an actual reading next to that suit. Kind of like when you turn the knobs on the faucet, you're manipulating the temperature. If you have a hot and a cold faucet, when you're turning, a little more cold, the water gets a little bit cooler, a little less cold. The water gets warmer, a little bit more hot. The water gets warmer, a little less hot. The water gets cooler. And so that's kind of the way I think about reversals, or one of the ways I think about reversals is that the reversal either makes the cards surrounding it warmer or cooler. We don't know which knob necessarily we've turned or in which direction we've turned it, because it's a total reversal. But it's that transitional possibility. And so if we stick for a moment with our continuum, when you reverse a club, say, since it's an obvious reversal, the club reversed is either leading more toward a diamond. It's either, the club reversed is either getting warmer, or the club reversed is leaning more toward the spade side. It's cooler. And often we take just the negative interpretation of a reversal. That's not always necessarily the case, in my opinion. Sometimes the reversal actually takes either it takes a positive card. Usually it doesn't take a positive card and makes it more positive. That's usually not what happens with a reversal. But it will kind of slow down a positive or demonstrate some negative aspect of that positive. Or with negative cards, sometimes it warms them up. It makes that cool or negative card a little bit more amenable. It's like when you first jump into the shower and the water's cold, but then, and you kind of tense up, oh no, it's cold. But then as the hot water flows a little bit, it kind of warms up and it's like, oh, okay, this is not so bad, even if you're not using a lot of hot water. So when a heart is reversed, though, that reversal could be making it lean more toward the diamond side, or it could be reversing it right around to the spade, because again, a heart looks like a spade. A heart reversed looks like a spade, except without the stem. So it could be moving it toward that coldest end of and that's why we have to make it a circle, because the heart reversed kind of turns it right around to the other end, toward the spade end. And then same with a spade reversed. Sometimes in traditional cartomancy, spades are bad, but then a spade reversed is worse. It's like things go from bad to worse when a spade is reversed. But I don't necessarily see it that way. Again, a spade reversed is like a heart that actually has a little fountain coming out of it. A spade reversed could actually turn it more toward the hot side, more toward the heart side. That's not always the case. It has to do with what card it is and what cards are surrounding it. But just to the point that kind of a reversal changes the temperature of the card. And it gives it the opportunity to either become a little bit warmer than its natural position, natural temperature, or a little bit cooler than its natural temperature. Diamonds are there. Well, there's a few cards that don't naturally reverse. Quite a few cards, actually. Almost half of them. The 12 court cards, certainly, they don't reverse. They're the same, upright and reversed. So for court cards, I don't read them as reversed. I don't mark the deck and read the reversal. Again, I read them in that kind of quantum reversed and non-reversed at the same time state. And then it depends on the adjacent cards and where they're looking. So with court cards, if court cards are facing each other, then I would take their more positive, upright definition. And then, if they're facing away from each other, then I would take usually their more negative or reversed definition. Not always, but generally speaking, that would be the case. So court cards don't reverse. The 12 court cards don't reverse. All of the diamonds visually don't reverse. They're vertically symmetrical, except for the 7 of diamonds. And that's quite interesting because the 7 is the midpoint between ace and 13. It's halfway. So it's interesting that the 7 is reversible. And then with the rest of the pips, all of the rest of the pips, the spades, clubs, and hearts, all of them are reversible except for the 2s, the 4s, and the 10s. All of the other pips do have a visual, obvious reversal, top and bottom. And so for me, I utilize that. I utilize the reversal, but then I also recognize that certain cards are not going to be reversed. I won't go that much further into that for now without going into individual cards, but it's something to think about, and think about in terms of what do the different numbers mean. So even numbers like 6 and 8, they have obvious reversals in the spades, clubs, and hearts. Odd numbers that you would think would have a more obvious reversal, like 5, 3, 9, they don't in the diamonds. So with diamonds, there's always that potential for things to turn or to be turned, or for double meaning to always be present and always on the face. I mean, double meaning is always present. The reversal is always possible. And one of the techniques working with tarot reversals is, if you don't like the way a situation is unfolding and you get a card that represents or kind of is involved in that situation and it's reversed, and it's like, well, I kind of would have rather see that upright, is you upright it. You take a moment and you internalize what's it like when that card's reversed? What's that meaning like? What does that feel like to you? What does that say to you? And then consciously take that card, physically take the card, and visually watch yourself as you turn the card upright, and then change also your feelings about that situation. So that that can be a technique that you can apply to cartomancy as well. Is more common, I think, in tarot. But the point of that is that there's always the potential. Whenever something exists, there's always the potential for its opposite. Um, and so, what I like about the diamonds, most of the diamonds not having an obvious visual reversal, is that they demonstrate that constant reality, then whenever something exists, so does its opposite. Whereas with other cards that do more obviously reverse, they're showing one side, but we should always kind of consider, if something exists, so does its opposite. So there's the potential for the opposite to be true, um, or for the opposite to exist as well, um, or for the opposite possibility to happen at a later date, for the situation to turn. And that goes whether it's a positive situation. Positive situations can turn to the negative. Negative situations can turn to the positive. That's another way of thinking of reversals. When you get the reversals, is um, it's something that is turning, has the possibility of turning, or has turned. Um, so a good example, again, I don't want to go into individual card meanings too much, but a typical kind of one of the most positive cards in the deck is considered the Nine of Hearts. Whenever it's there, it's a good sign. It's known colloquially, it's commonly known as the wish card, which I think someone will have to verify this for me, but I think that that same meaning got transferred from playing cards to tarot. It could be the other way around, but that's one of the similar meanings that seems to have crossed over, either from tarot to playing cards or vice versa. I think it's from playing cards to tarot, but today even many tarot card readers, one of the first meanings that you learn or receive about the Nine of Cups is it's the wish card. So your wishes come true, or something along those lines. Of course, the Nine of Cups in tarot has many, many other meanings, but that's like the immediate meaning for the Nine of Hearts in cartomancy. So when it's reversed, I usually interpret that as some kind of disappointment associated with your wish. So maybe you got your wish, but it wasn't as fulfilling as you thought it would be. It's like, well, I got what I wanted, but it wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. Or in future tense also, well, you'll get your wish, but you'll discover that what you wanted isn't really what you needed, or isn't what would be as fulfilling to you as you thought it might be. So that's where the Nine of Hearts kind of has a negative connotation with the reversal. But conversely, if the Nine of Hearts came up reversed, that could represent a momentary disappointment, but the potential for that disappointment to turn again towards something more positive, towards something more fulfilling. So it might be like, well, I'm almost there. I almost got my wish, but I didn't quite get it. And so I'm a little disheartened by that. But then that Nine of Hearts reversed says, well, don't be too disheartened because you're close. You're almost there. So just a little, just have a little bit more faith. Just continue a little bit further. Don't be too disheartened, because of course, what happens when we're disheartened about something, we lose momentum, we lose interest, we lose effort, we lose drive, and so that Nine of Hearts reversed can indicate you've lost that drive, or that urge, that desire, and yet the thing that you were longing for, the thing that you were urging for, is just around the bend. It's just there. You just have to have a little bit more commitment, a little bit more faith in yourself, to go that extra bit further. And so really all of the obvious reversal cards have those shades, have those nuances. So I won't go into all of them, but that's a good example. And in that vein of generalities, when you do throw a spread, um, and you see many reversals, that can indicate things are currently in a, I mean, things are always in a state of change. Nothing ever stays the same. But if there's lots of reversals in the reading, it could indicate that there's it's a state of lots of change, a period of lots of change for that person. Similarly, if you have a lot of cards that don't have the obvious reversals, the ones that can reverse without a visual change, that can indicate a period of stability where there's a potential for many different possibilities to happen, but there's also a stability there where the person is well equipped, is ready to handle kind of whatever's thrown at them. They're in a good uh, position, to be resilient and to be steady, no matter what happens. So those are a few other ways to look at reversals. And similar, if you have a lot of cards that are all upright, um, that's great. But again, it may indicate someone who, or a period of time for that person, where things are going well, but if things should change, they may not be well equipped to handle that change. They may be people who prefer things to always be on the up and up, always to be going their way. They may be control freaks. Um, or they just may not deal with change well. Um, Especially if it's like all cards that do have obvious reversals, but they're all upright in the spread. And just consider every time a reversal comes up, how is the temperature changing? How does this indicate a temperature change? Um, and how does this indicate a turn of the meaning, either how does it shade the meaning? How does it turn it towards something more positive? How does it turn it to something more negative? How does it warn of something more positive or negative? How does it warn maybe your outlook? Maybe you were expecting too much and you should be happy with what you got. I'm not saying that we should always settle or anything like that. Um, but sometimes our ambitions, our desires are a little bit too lofty. It's like, um, again, kind of using the Nine of Hearts as an example. Let's say my wish was to win $10 million in the lottery, and I go and I play the lottery, and I only win 1 million. It's like, well, yeah, it would have been nicer to win the 10 million, but be pretty happy with winning the 1 million. It's a pretty good thing to get. I mean, unless you're already a millionaire and $1 million is, chump change. But for most of us, $1 million is better than nothing. Like, that's better than playing the lottery and not winning anything, right? So, yeah, so just consider with your cards when they're reversed, is it perhaps indicating something that is changing, is in change, is in kind of on pause, or kind of has a slowed down nature to it? Is it kind of like when water moves through a pipe? Um, if it moves from a narrow pipe toward a wider pipe, then the water flow slows down. And then when the water pipe narrows, the water pressure, the speed of the water goes faster. Um, so that's kind of another way of thinking of reversals, is just that it changes the speed, it changes the temperature, and it warns of the potential for the opposite of whatever is happening to happen. But it also kind of is a beacon in a way of saying, well, the opposite can also happen. So if a situation is something that you want to turn around, a reversal can say that's a possibility. That door is open for you to cause that change. Play with your playing cards, and I'll be back with another Cartomancy video soon.